In the videos released on the Dinosaur Age channel, we've repeatedly touched upon the topic of unique animals. Their evolution took, at first glance, a very bizarre path. Such creatures began to appear almost from the moment of the origin of life. Probably with the appearance of the very first single-celled organisms, some of them developed according to their own standards. And, of course, all these oddities have always served one purpose: an attempt to better adapt to changes in the surrounding world. We'll tell you about some of the most famous creatures with unique abilities in a new series of our videos. And today, we'll talk about those animals that lived before dinosaurs began to rule the world. By subscribing to the channel, you'll be the first to know about the release of new episodes, and that means you'll have the chance to comment first on their content. Once again, we also encourage everyone to more actively mark the videos they like with likes. This helps our channel get noticed in the platform's algorithms and allows other science lovers to get to know the Dinosaur Age channel. Tiktaalik, a fish on 4 legs. This creature was no longer a fish, but it was still a long way from being a true amphibian. It lived in the distant Devonian period off the coast of modern Canada and Greenland. At that time, these places were home to shallow and fairly warm seas. Perhaps due to the abundance of vegetation, they were more like swamps. Tiktaalik's ancestors had to acquire powerful and long fins to make their way through these thickets. Tiktaalik itself, according to some scientists, were able to move on their flippers along coastal areas. In addition, they had both gills and lungs. This allowed them to spend quite a long time on land. At the same time, on the top of their large triangular head, there was an opening through which the Tiktaaliks could breathe atmospheric air without rising from the water. Despite the fact that the Tiktaalik is classified as a lobe-finned fish, it had a rather unique appearance. It was over 2 to 2.5 meters long. It didn't have a front dorsal fin, but its body was covered with scales. Its large mouth had 2 rows of teeth. There were no connecting plates between the skull and the shoulder girdle. Therefore, Tiktaalik could move its head left and right regardless of the position of its body. Arthropleura, a butterfly of the Carboniferous period. Of course, in reality, Arthropleura was a giant centipede, and butterflies didn't exist at that time. The remains of Arthropleura were found in North America and Scotland. According to scientists, their length could be up to 2.5 meters, due to the fact that the mouth apparatus of these arthropods was never found. For a long time, it was believed that they were active predators. With such dimensions, this isn't surprising. But when analyzing one of the finds, traces of plant food were found in the stomach. This made it possible to assume that the Arthropleuras were inclined to a vegetarian menu. Also, some researchers suggested that these centipedes performed the functions of modern butterflies and participated in the process of plant reproduction. When moving through the thickets, Arthropleura shook off pollen, which was retained in the joints of the scales of their jointed armor. Helicoprion, a fish with a rotating jaw. In 1897, a strange spiral structure was discovered in the late Permian deposits near the city of Krasnoyarsk. The geologist and paleontologist Karpinski, who studied it, found out that the strange pointed outgrowths on the spiral were teeth and belonged to a species of cartilaginous fish unknown at that time. He suggested that this strange structure was the upper jaw. The fish itself was named Helicoprion. This name comes from a combination of Greek words that could be translated as twisted saw. Subsequently, other remains of Helicoprions and related fish were found all over the world. After their study, the dental spiral was moved to the lower jaw. Although there's an opinion that it could have been located inside the fish's throat, it's believed that the teeth began to grow from the base of the spiral. As new ones appeared, the old ones were displaced and gradually shed. How this circular saw was actually used is not entirely clear. Some scientists even suggest that it could actually rotate to a certain extent, sawing through tentacles or mollusk shells, as well as causing serious wounds to fish and other marine animals. There's also an opinion that Helicoprions used it to sift through bottom silt. Scientists don't have more complete finds that could shed light on this problem. There's also no other living organisms with a similar structure of the oral apparatus. Therefore, this mystery remains unsolved for now. Carnifex, a bipedal crocodile. Although this crocodilomorph inhabited North America already at the end of the Triassic period and was the same age as the first dinosaurs, we can't help but include it in this issue. Several scattered bones of this distant relative of modern crocodiles were found in North Carolina almost 20 years ago. When described, it received a species name meaning Carolina butcher. Its body length is estimated at almost 3 meters, and its height 1.5. At the same time, it's believed that the found skeleton belonged to a not quite adult individual. The uniqueness of this crocodilomorph was that it most likely moved exclusively on its hind legs. Its front legs were much shorter. However, no evidence of the bloodthirstiness of Carnifex has yet been found. Scientists don't have bones with traces of its bites or fossilized remains of the contents of its stomach. But the method of movement it chose at that time was undoubtedly advanced. It's not for nothing that after the extinction of these two-legged crocodiles, the dominant predators became two-legged dinosaurs, theropods. Dunkleosteus, a monster fish with a toothless mouth. About 360 to 380 million years ago, in the Devonian period, this armored fish was the main predator of the planet. Its length could reach 10 meters, and its weight, 1 ton. The huge head was covered with armor plates and equipped with a terrifying mouth. This mouth also consisted of bone plates and was more like a beak. Instead of teeth, it had the same bone plates. But even with such a primitive mouth apparatus, Dunkleosteus could not worry about the fact that someone in the ocean would be too tough for them. The bite force of their jaws, according to scientists, were simply monstrous. Even modern crocodiles don't have such speed and bite power. And the Devonian seas were mostly inhabited by mollusks and ammonites. Their shells were easily broken by the jaws of Dunkleosteus. Even the sharks that had appeared by that time could not compete with this living torpedo. Dunkleosteus could bite them in half without much effort. The only creature that could harm this fish was another, larger Dunkleosteus. Cynognathus, woolly lizard. The Permian period was the era of theropods. At this time, a large number of creatures appeared that had many features of modern animals, but had not yet lost some features of reptiles. One of these animals was the Cynognathus. It was quite a large animal by the standards of its time. Its body length could exceed 1 meter. At the same time, almost a third of this size fell on the head with a toothy mouth. Their upper jaw was decorated with powerful saber-shaped fangs. Also, in the mouth of these theropods, there were primitive molars. It's due to this structure of the oral apparatus that Cynognathus got their name. Literally, it's translated as dog jaw. The hind legs of the Cynognathus were located under the body, like in mammals, and its forelimbs were still spread apart, like in reptiles. Cynognathus had differentiation of teeth, like in modern mammals. Studies of fossilized skin impressions of Cynognathus show that their entire bodies were covered in hair. They may also have had vibrissae, sensory hairs that act like whiskers, on their faces. Megawatia, the poisonous bear of the Permian period. The presence of poisonous glands among modern mammals is a great rarity, and only reptiles were able to create a developed apparatus for injecting toxin into the body of a victim from vertebrates. But since the synapsids of the late Permian period can be fully considered a transitional form, among them were animals that presumably had a poisonous bite. Megawatia is known only from one maxillary bone and several other scattered bones found in the Nizhny Novgorod and Vladimir regions of Russia. Initially, the finds were attributed to one of the Gorgonopsid species, but upon closer examination, it became clear that scientists had discovered a new predatory therapsid. In terms of size, Megawatia was approximately the same as modern bears, only its head and, accordingly, jaws were larger in relation to the size of the body. But most of all, scientists were attracted by the structure of the fangs of this formidable predator. Firstly, they were triple and grew from a common alveolar sac, and inside the fangs there were separate canals, which presumably led to glands that produced a poisonous toxin. It's impossible to confirm or refute this hypothesis due to insufficient materials, but if it's proven that Megawatia killed or immobilized its victim with poison, then it'll become the most ancient poisonous vertebrate in the history of the planet. The diversity of unique animal species that inhabited our planet at different times doesn't allow us to talk about all of them in one video. As the history of evolution shows, not all of these features allowed living organisms to successfully adapt to changes in living conditions. But the presence of precisely such, sometimes unusual, deviations allowed them to survive and develop further. In fact, the entire history of life from the simplest single-celled to highly developed mammals come down to the fact that certain unique features contributed to their further development and prosperity. Dinosaurs reigned on our planet for almost 200 million years. During this time, a huge number of species of these amazing creatures appeared and disappeared. Some of them, in the course of evolution, acquired unique abilities and acquired unusual external attributes. The purpose of some of them still remains a mystery to scientists. In this issue, we'll tell you about some strange and mysterious animals of the dinosaur age. Some of them have already been mentioned in our previous issues, while others we'll tell you about for the first time. Subscribe to our channel. This simple action will help you to be the first to know about the release of new videos. We also encourage our subscribers and viewers to comment more actively and mark their favorite videos with likes. This way, you can help in the development and promotion of the channel so that other science lovers can also learn about it. Dilophosaurus, a lizard with increased survivability that could not spit poison. In the first part of Steven Spielberg's film franchise Jurassic Park, viewers were presented with a very strange small dinosaur that could spit poison several meters away. This creature was declared as a Dilophosaurus, but unfortunately, the appearance and unique abilities of this predatory dinosaur turned out to be fiction. Writer Michael Crichton, who created this book series, decided that when restoring the DNA of this species, the genes of one of the poisonous frogs were used. He also gave this dinosaur a chic leathery collar. In this form, Dilophosaurus models are now exhibited even in theme parks with moving dinosaur figures. And as an additional attraction, it pours water from its mouth on passing tourists. In reality, Dilophosaurus were completely different. They lived in the United States and possibly China in the period from 182 to 200 million years ago. Dilophosaurus got its name for a pair of small crests on its head. They were one of the largest predators of their time. They were about 7 meters long and over 2 meters high. They weighed up to 400 kilograms. But these lizards eventually discovered their own superpower. One of the skeletons found showed traces of 8 healed injuries. This indicates the amazing vitality and high regeneration rate of this species. Thanks to these abilities, the Dilophosaurus is listed in the Guinness Book of Records as the dinosaur that received the most injuries. Nothosaurus, fake lizards that lived like seals. The name of these reptiles, which lived almost all over the world for about 210 to 240 million years, translates as fake lizards. In fact, they occupied the niche of modern pinnipeds, and partly also crocodiles and turtles. It's believed that one of the groups of Nothosaurus became the ancestors of the already fully aquatic plesiosaurs. On average, Nothosaurus were 3 to 4 meters long, but there were specimens that reached up to 6 to 7 meters. These were semi-aquatic animals, perfectly adapted for hunting fish and other marine life. Their paws were equipped with membranes, and the teeth of the Nothosaurus had a pointed shape. Their mouth formed a kind of trap for prey. But these animals reproduced on land. There's an assumption that they laid eggs in the coastal sand, like modern turtles. Oryctodromeus, a rabbit from the Cretaceous period. This species was the first of the described dinosaurs that were prone to digging holes. The fact is that in the USA, 3 individuals were found buried under a layer of earth. A more detailed study of the remains allowed us to assume that they died as a result of the collapse of their own hole. The size of the underground chambers and passages corresponded to the dimensions of an adult Oryctodromeus. These were small ornithopods. Their body length was slightly more than 2 meters. They weighed about 20 to 30 kilograms. Their holes had a total length of about 2 meters. They also had side tunnels that were dug by symbiotic animals. That is, smaller creatures that used someone else's hole for safety and ate the remains of the lizard's meal. Moreover, these undoubtedly predatory dinosaurs did not have pronounced adaptations for digging the earth. Their front paws were not very thick. Scientists assumed that they got food by running fast, and bulky front paws would only hinder them in this. This concept is implemented in approximately the same way in modern rabbits. They also live in burrows, but they don't have paws like, for example, a mole. Chaonosaurus, the first lover of nuts and seeds in history. A small dinosaur from China discovered at the end of the 20th century may well be the ancestor of all ceratopsians. Moreover, the giant descendants of Chaonosaurus, which lived at the end of the Jurassic period, are not at all similar to it in appearance or habits. The mass of this dinosaur was no more than 20 kilograms, the body length was 110, and the height was 70 centimeters. Presumably, it was a herding herbivore that moved on 2 legs. It did not yet have an impressive protective collar and long horns. Their place was occupied by small growths in the back of the head. But Chaonosaurus became the earliest known dinosaur with a beak. Scientists associate the presence of this tool with the appearance of the first nuts and other seeds in a hard shell. It turns out that these dinosaurs had at that time the unique ability to crack seeds and nuts. Pegomastax, a cross between a parrot and a porcupine with a built-in tooth sharpener. There have been many strange dinosaurs created over 200 million years, but the Pegomastax can safely claim to be the creature with the most amazing appearance. Its head ended in a short beak and was similar to the head of a modern parrot. At the same time, the body of this small ornithopod was covered with either thin needles or long, dense hairs. Perhaps they served as protection from predators. This dinosaur lived in South Africa about 200 million years ago. It weighed no more than 3 to 4 kilograms and had a body length of about 60 centimeters. One of the most interesting external features of Pegomastax were 4 long fangs protruding from its mouth. At the same time, the dinosaur itself was an herbivore, and the fangs were most likely for digging up roots or cutting plant shoots. Their fangs were positioned in such a way that when the mouth was closed, they sharpened themselves. Linchenicus, an anteater dinosaur that destroyed termite mounds with one finger. The small size of the forelimbs of large predatory theropods has long been a reason for the creation of memes. But the hands of the T-Rex and Carnotaurus look normal compared to what they turned into for the Linchenicus. Although it can be said that this dinosaur did this consciously. It lived in China about 83 million years ago and belonged to the Alvarezsaur family. Its body length barely reached 50 centimeters and it weighed no more than 500 grams. This baby ate various insects and termites. As a result of such a diet, it was forced to learn how to effectively destroy termite mounds and open thick tree bark. To achieve this, Linchenicus's hands lost most of their bones. In fact, instead of hands, it was left with only one finger, which had completely turned into a claw. Hulshkaraptor, a duck with flippers instead of wings. Around 2011, illegally mined samples of an unknown dinosaur's bones in the Mongolian part of the Gobi Desert ended up in private collections. Scientists were able to study them only several years later. This species was named after the Polish paleontologist, Halszka Ozmalska. She was one of the leading experts on Mongolian dinosaurs. The researchers got their hands on a virtually completely preserved skeleton of this small dinosaur. This allowed them to conclude that Hulshkaraptor occupied a rather specific ecological niche. It was a semi-aquatic fish-eating diving dinosaur. Hulshkaraptor was comparable in size to modern mallard ducks. It had a streamlined body and a long goose neck. Its mouth contained a set of sharp, slightly curved teeth designed for catching aquatic inhabitants. It's believed that it could dive for prey to great depths, as modern penguins do. At the same time, the hind legs of the Hulshkaraptor were quite long and thin. This suggests that the dinosaur moved very quickly on land. It was not possible for it to leave the shore forever. After all, like other dinosaurs, it laid eggs. Therefore, the Hulshkaraptor acquired a unique feather for dinosaurs. For ease of swimming, it grew membranes on its front paws and used them in the water. Nigersaurus, a sauropod with replaceable sets of teeth. About 110 million years ago, a rather unusual lizard lived on the territory of modern Nigeria. It's considered a dinosaur with the largest number of teeth. Nigersaurus was discovered more than 50 years ago, but a more detailed description of this species appeared only in the late 90s of the last century, when more samples appeared for study. It was a classic four-legged herbivorous dinosaur with a long neck. Its length was about 9 meters, and its weight was up to 4 tons. Compared to its relatives, the sauropods, Nigersaurus was quite small, but it had some unique features. Firstly, its jaw was located across the head and was much wider than the facial part of the skull. Secondly, the teeth of this dinosaur were located in a kind of battery. Behind each of the front teeth, there were 9 more spare ones. As it grew older and its teeth wore down, Nigersaurus replaced them with new ones. Its upper jaw included 68, and the lower jaw 60 such columns of teeth. These structures are also seen in hadrosaurs and ceratopsians. But Nigersaurus used more than 500 active and replaceable teeth throughout its life. This makes it a record holder not only among dinosaurs, but possibly among all other animals. In the videos released on the Dinosaur Age channel, we never cease to be amazed by the diversity of living organisms that inhabited our planet at different times. In the next episode of the series about animals with unique abilities and features of appearance, We'll talk about those of them that appeared after the dinosaurs. We'll also talk about modern animals whose descendants survived the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction and successfully exist to this day. Of course, as always, only a small number of them fit into the timing of our release. But if the viewers like this format, then we'll continue to talk about animals with superpowers in the future. By subscribing to our channel, you'll be the first to know about the release of new episodes, and you'll be able to leave your comments under the videos first. You guys can also express your support by leaving a like. These actions will really help promote our videos across the channel, and this way we can plan our future videos on what you all want to see. Doedicurus, an armored knight of the Pleistocene period. At one time, Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus came up with a special protection from predators. Apparently, the presence of strong dorsal armor and a club on the tail was a fairly effective way to fight toothy monsters. Mammals that captured the planet after the extinction of dinosaurs also decided to use similar methods. One of the brightest representatives of such armored herbivores was Doedicur, or Doedicurus. It was a huge armadillo weighing up to 1.5 tons and reaching 4 meters in length. These giants lived mainly in South and Central America. The last representatives of this family met the first people who settled in their habitats about 10 to 11,000 years ago. Their bodies were covered with impenetrable armor on top, and at the end of the tail, there was a spiked club. It's more reminiscent of a medieval poleaxe, but the scientists who discovered the creature gave it a name meaning tail pistol, referring to its resemblance to the corresponding part of a flower. Ambulocetus, a walking whale that heard without ears. This animal, which lived in the Middle East between 41 and 47 million years ago, is considered to be a transitional form from land creatures to modern cetaceans. Outwardly, Ambulocetus resembled a bizarre cross between a dolphin and a crocodile. Their bodies were covered with fur, and there were membranes between the fingers. They reached 3 meters in length and weighed about 300 kilograms. They were predatory animals that attacked their prey by jumping out of the water, like modern crocodiles do. Ambulocetus lived both near rivers and on the seacoast. It's believed that they swam by bending their bodies in a vertical plane, like modern whales. On land, these animals moved quite awkwardly. Scientists also suggest that they moved from the seas to rivers to give birth and raise offspring. One of the most unique features of Ambulocetus was the structure of their hearing apparatus. They no longer had auricles, therefore they could not perceive air vibrations caused by sound waves. It's believed that vibrations of the environment were transmitted through the bones of the skull. Thylacosmolus, a saber-toothed tiger that was dying of hunger. Despite their saber-toothiness, these inhabitants of South America from the late Miocene and early Pliocene were not cats, but marsupials. At the same time, Thylacosmolus had many features of saber-toothed cats. They were up to 140 centimeters long, excluding the tail, and up to 60 centimeters tall. According to various estimates, they weighed from 55 to 110 kilograms. In these parameters, they could be compared with modern inhabitants of this area, jaguars. Thylacosmolus had a long and powerful neck, but at the same time, it's believed that they were quite slow animals. Their low speed didn't allow them to effectively hunt ungulates. Their prey, most likely, was also slow, and therefore well protected. It was for hunting such animals that long saber-shaped fangs were needed. Moreover, the roots of the Thylacosmolus fangs were much longer than the roots of the Smilodon fangs. Such a structure of the dental apparatus left very little room for the brain. In this respect, saber-toothed cats were clearly ahead of their marsupial imitator. The remaining teeth of the Thylacosmolus were very poorly developed and didn't have the ability to recover. Over time, they wore out almost completely. Some researchers suggest that this was the reason for their short lifespan. Adult animals could not normally cut up their prey and simply died of hunger. At the moment, the animals described above are extinct, but even now, a huge number of creatures with unique skills live on our planet. We'd need to have a much longer video to include more detailed descriptions of their abilities. Therefore, we'll try to briefly talk about as many of them as possible. Number 1. The toad-like lizard, which lives on both American continents, squirts a stream of its own blood at its enemy when in danger. Its blood contains a dangerous toxin. The lizard gets it from the ants it feeds on. It's believed that it can use up to a third of its blood reserves as a weapon without any significant danger to its health. But the most amazing thing is that a stream of caustic blood shoots out of the animal's eyes at the enemy. Number 2. Small jellyfish, Teratopsis nutricula, which have spread from the Caribbean Sea to almost the entire planet, are technically immortal. having received an injury, having found themselves in unfavorable conditions, or simply having reached maturity, these creatures, no more than 5 millimeters in size, attach themselves to the bottom or other surfaces and turn into a polyp. During this state, the cells of its body are renewed. After this, the revived immortal jellyfish can again exist in its original form. Moreover, it can reproduce in both states. In the form of a jellyfish, it reproduces sexually, and in the form of a polyp, by budding. Number 3. Modern centipedes are much smaller than the Arthropleura from the Carboniferous period. Therefore, many of them are poisonous. Toxins are necessary for centipedes to protect themselves from predators. Some species of centipedes are capable of secreting poisons from the cyanide group. For example, the dragon centipede from Southeast Asia not only accumulates poison in large doses, but also smells like almonds. This smell is typical for this type of toxin. And the polychrome aphiloria, recently discovered in the wooded mountains of Virginia, USA, can even spray poison around itself. It's believed that the poison in the body of one centipede is enough to kill 18 birds the size of a pigeon. Like many poisonous creatures, these centipedes are very brightly colored, and some of their non-poisonous relatives diligently copy their coloring for self-defense. Number 4. The common ornamented snake lives in the jungles of Southeast Asia. If the word ornamented can still characterize this animal, then the concept of ordinary doesn't apply to it at all. The fact is that this snake, unlike most of its relatives, can fly. Scientific research has shown that it's able to glide without much difficulty from a height of more than 40 meters. For reference, that's roughly a 12-story building. To fly, it's learned to straighten its ribs and use them as a kind of wing. Number 5. Bedbugs have a rather strange but effective way of reproduction. To fertilize a female, the males of these small parasites don't necessarily have to get their genitals into a specific place. They poke them almost anywhere and simply drill into the female's body, injecting their semen directly into the blood. At the same time, a female fertilized in this way doesn't necessarily lay eggs right away. They're able to choose the most favorable time to become pregnant, and in the future, she won't need to resort to the services of a male again for this. Also, the female's body may contain genetic material from different males, and even if a male gets his genitals into the body of another male during fertilization, the latter automatically changes his sex and continues life as a female. Number 6. The hairy frog lives in some areas of Central Africa, but it's notable not only for the thinnest, leathery growths on the side of its body resembling hairs. It's believed that frogs need this tool for breathing. With their help, they retain air bubbles in the water. The real superpower of the hairy frog, which even some comic book heroes would envy, is the way it protects itself from enemies. When in danger, the bones of the frog's hind legs break and cut through the skin. Such sharp claws can simply scare a predator without resorting to a fight. Having avoided danger, the frog retracts its claws and quickly grows them stronger, and also heals the skin. This is very similar to the ability of one superhero from the Marvel Universe. Number 7. A small shrimp called the pistol shrimp has an average length of about 5 centimeters. At the same time, one of its claws is much larger than the other and can exceed the size of its own body. This claw closes so quickly that it forms an air bubble heated to more than 4,000 degrees Celsius and flying at a speed of about 100 kilometers per hour. When bursting, such bubbles make a very loud sound that can deafen and even kill small fish that this crustacean hunts. Under certain conditions, the pistol shrimp can cause serious injury even to a person. But for this, a person must be in the water a few centimeters away from it. Fortunately, such cases haven't been registered at the moment. However, there are unconfirmed stories about minor bleeding from the finger caused by an attack of this small arthropod. We thank everyone who watched this episode all the way to the end. If you want to learn more about unique animals from different eras, we advise you to pay attention to the previous videos posted on our channel. They also tell about the evolution of life on the planet, the emergence and development of people, their relationships with the surrounding world, and the internal problems of human society.